Recording in progress. Does everyone hear that? I just wonder if it's just me that hears
Yes.
it or everyone
Yes,
hears it.
yes.
Sounds so official. Recording in progress. So we do record these calls, and it's for educational and promotional purposes. So we do post the training out on the internet, just so others can kind of learn from what we're doing here. And wherever you see me, if you see me, that is the recorded part. So we'll be going into some rooms and so forth, breakout rooms. And if you see me in your room, just realize that the call that's being recorded. So, okay, well, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you all here. Just so excited about this new cohort that we're starting. I'm Edwin Rutsch, the director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. And I was going to go through and just share, we just talked about the recording. We are recording this, and so I wanted to go through some of the roles that we have here in this group. That we have the producer role, which is what I'll be doing, which is kind of doing all the organizational background work. I've talked to most of you when everyone signed up. I reached out to you and we talked about your participation in the cohort. And so I do, as producer, more of the background organizational roles. And we have, I think, 4 trainers who have in this group. And the trainers are people who have done the training multiple times and are very experienced in the training. And I'm going to just introduce them quickly. And the 2 people who were core to developing this training are Lou Twyer, if you want to raise your hand, and Bill Filler. So they both were central in creating this training. And then we have Ann Jordan, if you want to, and Celine. So those are our trainers for this group. Then we have trainees, and they're people who have taken the training at least once and are taking it starting to take it again to become a trainer of it. And I'm just going to go down the list here. We have Adelina, if you just want to raise your hand, Larry, Joelle, Evelyn, and let's see, Cynthia, and Linda, and Ralph, I think there. So those are the trainees in this cohort. So with that, I get to step back now and turn it over to Ann Jordan, the trainer, and I get to just do all the nuts and bolts stuff in the background. And before I do that, since some new people have joined, I'm going to put into the link here the Mentimeter. It's a poll to share your 3 most important values, and we're going to be talking about those later. So Ann, take it away to introduce us and set things up.
So welcome everybody. So I'm Ann Jordan, as you've heard. I'll start by introducing myself and then invite you all to introduce yourselves. And we'll just have 30 seconds each to do this because there are a lot of us and we need to bear in mind the time. So I'm Ann and I'm in the southwest of England. And the reason I'm here is that I'm really pretty passionate about building a culture of empathy in the world. And this seems like the best way to do it, to help other people to be able to facilitate. So I'm going to now pass on and I'll tell you the next 2 people and I hope not to miss anybody. So Celine, would you like to introduce yourself next? And after Celine, Lou, please.
Sure. So I live in the southern part of Oregon in the United States on the West Coast. And I imagine a world where people can listen to each other without reacting and without pulling back because they know how to listen and how to be empathic. And that's why I'm here, building that world.
And
so over to you, Lou, and after Lou, Bill.
Okay, so I'm Lou Zwire. I'm from Northern California in the US, and I'm just so excited to see all the faces of the people who are interested in learning about this, and so grateful to you for taking time out of your days, and we'll be doing this for multiple weeks to learn about this and to try to contribute to creating a more empathic world. So thank you very much. That's why I'm here.
And after Bill, Larry, please.
Yeah, I'm Bill Filler. I'm a retired special education teacher here in the San Francisco Bay Area in the United States. And I just want to echo that we all are trying very hard to build a culture of empathy, and it takes a certain amount of skill and bravery to come here and commit to that. And so I really appreciate you all for doing that. Thanks.
And after Larry, Linda, please.
Hi, I'm Larry in Florida. I'm a retired occupational therapist and really thrilled to be a part of the empathy circles. It's just awesome. Thank you.
Linda, I'm a mediator, arbitrator here in Keller, Texas. I'm telling you, this works. This is time well spent for both your professional and personal life. It's working for me.
And after Linda, Cynthia, and then Donnie, please.
I'm Cynthia Ganote from Louisville, Kentucky in the US. And I am a sociology professor who's always thought that taking sociology as a tool to teach people empathy, to teach people what it's like to be in another's shoes. That's been a deep part of my calling. And I am so dedicated to the empathy circle method of getting people to really learn how to listen to each other deeply, to connect with each other, to listen and really hear each other, and then using that as a way to build a greater culture of empathy in each of our micro environments, and then ideally, of course, rippling out to the entire world.
Thanks, Cynthia. So after Donnie, Edwin, please.
Hi, my name is Donnie Sahalbak. I live in Kamloops, Alberta in Canada. And I am trying to develop my skills as an active listener. And I think that building a culture of empathy is important. And so thank you.
And after Edwin, Melissa, and a reminder that we just have 30 seconds each maximum. And after your name and your location, why it is that you're interested in taking part of this training.
Yeah, Edwin Rutch from the San Francisco Bay Area. And I find empathy circles the best first step gateway practice for learning empathy. And I just want to spread it all over the world, everybody in the world to learn it, all 8 billion people. That's me. Thanks.
Thanks, Edwin. Melissa, and then Evelyn or Evelyn.
Evelyn.
Yeah, hi. I'm Melissa, and I'm from Northern California. And I am a healthcare worker, and I've realized over the years we are in such a rush that we forget to actually take the time to listen to people. And we all jump to conclusions that has caused a lot of ill will and bad feeling in the world. And this is a wonderful way to start, to help myself and then to go ahead and help those around me. Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you. After Evelyn, Ralph.
Okay, my name is Evelyn. I live in Germany. I'm originally from the States. That's a short version. I find the empathy circle very healing, and that's why I'm here, healing myself, and also I want to pass it on to other people, and glad to be here again.
And after Ralph, Adelina, please.
Hi, I'm Ralph Galen. I live north of Boston in the poorest community in New England. And it's also a very energized community where people are rushing about. And it's imperative that I like that idea that empathy is a gateway. Without empathy, there's no presence, there's no communication, there's no sharing of love and understanding. So I love being here, and I love spreading it around. Thank you.
Thank you. And after Adelina, Melinda, please.
Hi, I'm Adelina. I'm from Bucharest, Romania, and the reason why I'm here is because from my practice and in my life, I realized that empathy is really important, and one of the reasons why it's difficult to understand each other, and it makes it easier to connect. And it's important for me to be able to listen to the others and to be listen myself without any kind of judgments.
After Melinda, is it Vicence?
Hello, my name is Dr. Melinda Perry. I should have changed it. I am from Lafayette, Louisiana. I work in Lafayette Parish School District, and my reason for wanting to take it is because going to one of the cafes, I realized that I can utilize it with my students. Some of my students don't feel like they're being heard. And so this is a great way to link that, and not only just the students, but the teachers. And if I can teach them to listen, then, and each side is heard, then I think it would cure some of our behaviors that I see inside the school. So that's my reason for taking it.
Thank you, Melinda. And after Vicence, Faithful.
Sorry. Yeah, this is Vicence from an island in Spain, Mallorca. And my main reason is to, it's similar to Melinda's reason. So it's to bring empathy circles to schools. But I mean, in general, not just, I mean, yeah, in general for teachers and students, maybe in the language or English class, just to use these circles for expression and all of this. Thanks.
Thank you. Over to Faithful and then Joel.
Yeah, my name is Iro Faithful from Nigeria. My reason for joining this class is to make sure I transmit the culture of empathy to Africa, the culture of love, kindness, and sharing together. That is just my major reason of joining this class. Thank you.
After Joel, Regina. Excuse my pronunciation if I'm getting it wrong.
Hey everybody, I'm Joelle. I'm on the west coast of the US in Oregon. I'm a social worker and I teach music and movement with families and young children. And I'm really excited about the growth of empathy in all of our cultures, and just looking at all of you, thinking of it sort of spreading outwards and healing the people around you.
And after Regina, Garen.
Good morning, everyone. I am in the San Francisco Bay Area, California, and I hope you can hear me okay. I put on my headset. I'm having some work done. My neighbors, as well as myself, are both renovating. And I'm here because there is such a need. I actually work in Alameda County in behavioral health, and I'm also a coach. And my passion is to work with more youth, which is kind of my foundation. And I have a big goal of creating a children's zone. And in order to do that, I want to cultivate more spaces where we can be empathetic, as we've become so technology enriched and focused, and we move like that in that space. And so I just want to bring more empathetic listening to these spaces. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Garen and then Alfred. Garen, you're still muted if you're speaking. Garen, can you hear me?
Are you saying Gary? Oh, I'm Gary Barker. I'm in the greater metropolitan area of Portland, Oregon. And my main reason for taking this is that I work for a newspaper. So I teach and I'm a coordinator for a program called Mojo. And I think the Empathy Circle will help my listening skills because I have participants that are unhoused, and I want to make sure I meet their needs and be empathetic to the reason, because I used to be homeless at one time, and I wanted to pass the culture on into the city of Portland, so the unhoused and the housed can learn to listen to each other and communicate better. That's my story.
Thank you, Gary. And then Alfred, followed by Sopadla.
I'm Alfred Ramirez. I'm in East Moline, Illinois, the border of Iowa and Illinois, originally from East LA, California, and a few states in between. I do diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, justice work, as well as leadership, coaching, and training. And a lot of the issues I'm encountering are internalized racism, oppression, empathy fatigue, racial fatigue, conflict, and how do you have conversation? So this is going to be invaluable for me to be a service to my communities and communities throughout. And you all had me at Empathy Cafe. I was sold just on the name. So thank you.
Thanks, Alfred. Sopadla? Not able to hear you. Your sound seems to be a problem.
Maybe we could do the chat.
Shall I come back to you, Sopadla, and see if we can sort it out? Can't hear you. Perhaps for now, if you put it in the chat, and I'll move on and then come back to you in a minute. Rosie, followed by Christine. Was that a thumbs up? Rosie, and then Christine.
Hi, my name is Rosie Young. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I'm deeply excited and interested in this course because I am working in justice, equity, decolonization, and inclusion. And I've personally experienced a lack of empathy from others, and I know I'm not given enough empathy to others. And I see this as invaluable both for my personal relationships as well as the work that I want to do.
Thank you. And after Christine, Kathleen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christine. I'm from New York. I also do diversity, equity, inclusion work, and this is definitely aligned with the trainings that I've done in the past within like conflict areas internationally and within refugees and LGBTQ+. So I'm really excited to do this work. It allows deeper connections and meaningful relationships, and to really teach it and facilitate it for others as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And after Kathleen, Kendria.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Young. I live in Massachusetts on the East Coast of the US. I was a teacher for 25 years of social studies and social justice issues. Recently, I just found such a divide and such a disconnection between students based on all the politics going on here and the increase of technology. I've since left teaching, and now I'm a mediator and coach for schools. And I would just love to bring this to kids, teachers, administrations, just so there's more dialogue. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Kendria Taylor. I live in Arlington, Texas. I am a workplace mediator as well as a family mediator. I also coach empathy in leadership training. So one of my frameworks that I train, everything that I base my leadership training in is based in empathy. So the empathy circles are going to be something that I can definitely add to that. And so I'm super excited to learn and happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then Rosie, sorry you didn't get much warning, and then Maggie, is it?
And I'm not sure if you meant me, but I already went.
I'm sorry, my screen's jumped around and I'm relying on my screen order. So where was I? Maggie, are you able to go next, please? Followed by Sally.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie. I am really happy to be here, really enthusiastic, loving my little bit of experience with the empathy circles. I do work with people on a professional level, and I'm interested, deeply interested in picking up pieces at the community level, looking at how to create community and do a lot of community healing involving the intersections between racism, colonial work, decolonial work, and climate, and the importance of building a strong healing kind of movement at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Sally, and then if we come back to Sopadla, if you're ready, and then Dominica. Sally, you know?
Yeah, I saw that. I'm gonna do the hummingbird. Yeah, I'm Sally. I live in the Sierra foothills in California, and I am here. It kind of started out just getting along with my husband, and now I'm working on an empathy game for kids, and so this is my third training, and so I'm just you know, building in my capabilities, and it's just one step at a time.
Thank you, Sally. Sopadla, please get my pronunciation corrected. No, can't hear you.
You're muted.
Muted now. I'll come back again in a minute. Dominica, you haven't been yet, have you?
No, hello. My name's Dominica, and I'm in Loreto, Mexico, which is in Baja California Sur, so just like straight down under California. But I'm originally born and raised in California, and I am excited to take this because I'm just very much in my learning and developing and healing phase of spirituality right now, and I think this is going to be of great use and knowledge for me in my life, and also in the work that I do with people and in the community.
Thank you, Dominica. Okay, now Sopadla has disappeared for me, so I guess you might be coming back in. Now, have I missed anybody?
And me.
Please shout loudly.
Prasanna.
Oh, Prasanna. I'm sorry, it's a screen jumping around. Prasanna.
Yeah. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Prasanna. I'm from India. Prasanna means happiness, just for clarity. And I'm here because I think this is such a huge human library out here. We learn about cultures, about people, about experiences through books. I think so many people are there and so many stories are there. And it's a place for me where I can learn about people and from where they are coming, and unlearn about my prejudices and relearn and connect with myself and be more empathetic. So that's why I continuously come back to this circle.
Okay, so is there anybody else that I've missed?
Sopadla, I think, came back, and
Is he back? Oh, great. Sopadla, going to try again.
Sorry, everyone.
Yes, we can hear you. Good.
Wow, great. Thank you, Anne, and thank you for waiting for me. My name is Mehboob Ali Sopadla. I'm from India. Why I'm here is because I want to apply this in my professional life and my personal life. I feel this is a great tool to heal the conflicts between the people and create a bond. Yeah, thank you.
Would you repeat your name, please, because I didn't catch it? How you say your name?
My name is Mehboob Ali Sopadla. Sopadla is the one. You are right, Anne. You are pronouncing it perfectly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to hand on now to, I can't see my script. Who am I handing to, please?
We were going to do feedback, but I don't think we'll be doing that. So maybe we'll go right to Celine with the class overview. Are you there, Celine?
You muted, Celine.
Still muted, Celine.
Okay, here I am.
Yes.
So we are going to, wait a minute. I'm going to talk about the purpose of this training and the empathy circle practice, which, as you know, is to create a culture of empathy. And the learning outcomes, what we're hoping that you will take away from this training are that you'll understand and become familiar with the goals, the values, and the structure, the basic structure of the empathy circle, so that then you can guide others through the experience. And second, that you deepen your experience and skill of being an empathy circle facilitator. 3, that you become aware of your strengths and learning edges as a facilitator, and we will support you in doing that so that you can, when you're on your own, learn to respond to typical challenges that can arise in an empathy circle. And 4, that you leave this training having established strong bonds and a sense of community with each other so that you can support each other as you go on to create empathy circles in other situations, and always to build a culture of empathy. And the way this is going to work is, these are the 5 sessions that we'll be together. In the first session, which is now, we're reviewing the empathy circle practice. We'll be introduced to the core values of a culture of empathy, and we'll experience the benefits of the practice and share how wonderful the values are together. In the second session, we'll focus on practicing the how-to, the introductions, and you'll begin right away to facilitate an empathy circle. This is learning by doing. In the third session, we will demonstrate the how-to and the introduction again, and then you will have the option to have a little bit more challenging circle situations if you feel ready. In the fourth session, you'll get more time to facilitate and discuss challenges that might arise as you facilitate. And in the fifth session, we integrate it all, what our learnings are, and gather feedback about our experience and our plans for how to implement the empathy circles in our lives. And I'm going to pass to Bill now to talk about the core values and principles.
Sure. Well, the empathy circle is a wonderful tool and a wonderful technique, but if it's not, couched in the values of some sort of values of culture of empathy, then you're not doing it right. So and that'll be an ongoing conversation. And so we came up with some values that it's not, there's some other ones that you may come up with, and we'll review the Mentimeter. But the ones that we came up with are empathy, which is at the core of a culture of empathy, mutuality, so we make sure that everybody gets an equal chance and feels welcome. Openness, if you are open, then you are, sharing really more deeply and more honestly. And so that really strengthens the circle experience. And then care, having a sense of what's necessary for the health, welfare, and well-being of oneself and others. And again, you may have some other values, those are fine. But when you're doing and facilitating the circle, when you decide to, do one thing or the other as far as the structure of the empathy circle goes, we hope that you remember the culture, these values, and do them with care and honesty, etc. And that's just, you'll get more, experience in that as we go on. And then we'll revisit it in the 5th session to see how the training has maybe altered or strengthened your views of these. And I'm going to pass it on to Edwin. He's going to show us the Mentimeter.
Yeah, so we had asked you all to add 3 values that were important to you, and I'm going to just share those. So what we're going to be doing in the next section in our breakout circles in a little bit is be talking about how your values relate to empathy. And these are the values that people came up with in this group, because part of empathy is being sensitive to other people's values, their feelings and values. And it's good to know what they are in this group. So you can see we have all kinds of different values: compassionate listening, groundedness in the body, authenticity, understanding, truth, inclusive. So there's a wide variety of different values. And what we really want to be able to do is look at how those values relate to the value of empathy and mutuality, and to a larger culture of empathy. But before we go into the breakout rooms, we're going to be getting a little overview of how to do the empathy circle. Just a quick reminder, you've all done empathy circles before, but just a quick reminder, and Lou will be explaining that.
Thanks, Edwin. Yeah, so one of your tasks as a facilitator when you bring a circle together is to explain to people how the circle works, or explain it enough that they understand what they're participating in. And that's what we call the intro, introducing people to the circle. And like Edwin said, all of you have participated in at least a couple circles, so you understand the process. But it's really great to listen to different people explain what the empathy circle is, because everyone does it a little bit different. And so that's why I'm doing an introduction today, just as a demonstration or an example of a way to introduce the circle. Now, when I do an intro, my goal is to not spend more than 5 minutes. The idea is to give people the basics of the circle without trying to give them every little detail, because you don't want to overwhelm them. You just need to give them enough information that they can participate in the circle and that they have some comfort, that they understand how it works. And then I usually try to say a little bit something about what I will do as a facilitator, just so that they're well aware of it, and if I do things, they're not surprised by it. So this is how I do it. So I say, welcome. We're going to be doing an empathy circle today. The empathy circle is a kind of a structured listening practice, mutual listening practice, the goal of which is for everyone to have a chance to speak and be heard. And so there's a little bit of structure that ensures that happens. So this is how it works. One person will decide to take a turn speaking, and the speaking terms are timed, so that's what is the kind of built-in mutuality in the circle, is that everybody gets a chance to speak by having a certain amount of time. Typically, we take 5-minute turns for speaking. And the speaker, before the speaker starts speaking, they select someone else in the circle to reflect back what they are saying. So everyone in the circle is listening to the speaker, but the reflector has the job of actually, when the speaker pauses, reflecting back what they understand the speaker is saying. And as the speaker, if the circle has a topic, you can speak on the topic, or sometimes there's no topic for the circle, it's just whatever you would like to talk about. And even if there is a topic for the circle, one of the rules of the circle is when it's your turn to speak, you could say whatever you want. And one of the ways to keep the circle meaningful is that you talk about what's important to you in the moment when it is your turn to speak. So as the speaker, after you get an idea or two out, you pause, so that the listener has a chance, the reflector has a chance to reflect it back. If you don't pause, it can become overwhelming for the reflector and they can't remember, everything. So yeah, so we ask that you pause after an idea or two. If the reflection is not accurate, if they're not really getting you, you could say, no, that's not it. This is it. You could try again. If they get part of it, you could say, oh, I heard this you heard this, but that you missed this piece over here. When the speaker's turn is up and they get their final reflection, then the listener becomes the speaker, and they take their speaking turn. And before they start speaking, they select someone else in the circle to reflect them. And the speaking and reflecting kind of go around the circle, so everybody gets a chance. And if you complete one rotation, it keeps going. You just keep going. And actually, the idea is to get to a third or fourth speaking turn. That's ideal. As a facilitator, the things I would do is I will keep time. I keep it on my phone, and you'll hear a chime go off when the time's up. If you don't seem to be hearing that, sometimes on Zooms people don't hear it, I'll hold my phone up as a visual cue that the time is up. If you are the speaker and you get a time cue, just finish up what you're saying. You don't have to stop instantly, but finish your idea and then get a reflection. Another thing I'll do as a speaker, as the facilitator, is that if the speaker forgets to pause, I'll remind you of that. It's easy to forget. You get involved in your ideas. And if the reflector does something other than reflecting back what they're hearing, so if you fall into asking questions or making comments or agreeing or disagreeing or adding your own experience or all the other things that we have habitually do in kind of normal conversation, I'll just remind you that your role is to just reflect back what you're hearing the person say. And the last thing I might do as a facilitator is if the speaker is really not being heard and the speaker's starting to get frustrated, then I might help with a reflection. And so those are some of the things I might do as facilitator. So does anyone have any questions before we start? And that's how I introduce the circle. And I think, Rosie, well, I'm not going to take a lot of, do you have one question, Rosie? I'll take one question. But so that was kind of a rhetorical, what I would ask the people in my circle. But do you have a question, Rosie?
Sorry. Yes. This came up in some of the cafes where in the reflecting back, a question we all had was, are we just repeating what the other person's saying using their own words, or is there a best practice or recommendation around paraphrasing or adapting what they said?
The most important thing is that the speaker feel heard. And it's interesting that some people, if you don't use some of their words, they actually won't feel heard. And other people, if you use a lot of their words, they'll feel like you're parroting back and they won't feel heard. So, you do what's comfortable for you, and people bring different levels of skill to doing the reflection. So, some people will reflect back just exactly what they heard, and that's where they are, and that's okay. And then if the most important thing is that the speaker feel heard, and if they're not feeling heard by the reflection, then the reflector can add some stuff in. And I can say more about that, but I'm not going to now because it's important for us to get into the circles.
Okay, thank you, Lou.
Yeah. But I will say this: so speaking is combined of information, feelings, and values. People are expressing values when they are speaking because of what it's important to them. And they are expressing feelings either implicitly or explicitly, and they're expressing information. And so a good listener listens for all those things and tries to reflect them. But we don't teach that to people. We just let them learn it by doing it. And we accept them wherever they are. We don't correct them for however they reflect, other than if they get into question asking or the other things other than reflecting back what the person said. Okay, so I see that Iro, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, has a question. Go ahead and say it, and I'll decide whether I'm going to answer it right now.
All right. I wanted to. I had a cafe, and I realized that some people have the skill of speaking faster, very fast, and some others don't have the skill of listening to people who speak very fast. I don't know, do we have a system where people can perhaps reduce how fast they speak so that other people who don't have that skill of listening very fast would be able to follow?
That's
Thank
a
you.
great question. And I would say that, yes, as a facilitator, I would ask the speaker to slow down. If I thought that the reflector was having trouble understanding, I would ask them to slow down, yes. Okay, so let's get into the circles.
Celine was going to give us an overview of the circle.
Go ahead, Celine.
Right. You're muted.
We're going to be in the circles for about an hour and a half. And the topic will be, how does one of your values relate to empathy and a culture of empathy, or whatever is alive for you? That is always an option. And the trainees will facilitate the circle. You will have 5-minute turns, and then we will come back together to debrief. I think that's complete.
It. Maybe we'll do 4-minute turns because we're a little bit late. We're 10 minutes late, so maybe about 4-minute turns, because we really want to try to get everyone to have 3 turns. So the first room will be with Joelle. I'll be with you and your group. The second group will be with Ralph, and Celine will support Ralph. Ralph will facilitate. The third room, Linda will facilitate with Lou supporting her, the trainer. Fourth group will be Prasanna with Larry as support, and then Cynthia with Bill as support, and then Adelina with Anne as support. So those are the rooms, and you'll all be in those rooms. I'll give about a 10-minute warning before we close. We have an hour and, let's see, an hour and 15 minutes in the rooms. And then the facilitator will be the first listener. You just go right into the listening. You don't need to do a lot of explanation. So just be the first listener, and let's go. And so here we go, and see you. Oh, Evelyn? You'll be with Evelyn. You'll be with Adelina this time. So I see your hand up. So you're in that room. So you won't be facilitating this time, but the next time.
All right.
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. There we go. Oh, I keep forgetting. There's a feature where you can force everyone into the room so they don't have to click, and I keep forgetting to push that button. So I'll be here with you, Joelle, in this room, and I think there's
so many details to remember.
I know, it's too much.
Yeah, it's kind of too much for our brains sometimes. I think that's just kind of how it is.
Okay.
All right. We have our group. We've got Gary and Dr. Melinda and Rosie and Edwin and myself. So we're going to I'm going to hit my timer for an hour and 15 minutes so that we make sure that we have a moment to debrief. I've got a timer going I will start 4-minute turns. And everybody, we're going to jump in pretty quickly because just doing it is the kind of the best way to learn. But when we get to the end of the time, you may hear my timer go off, but sometimes people don't hear that. So I also have a little time signal. If you reach time when you're in the middle of something, feel free to kind of finish your thought. So what we're going to do is and also when you are sharing, remember to pause, remember to make your thoughts come out in kind of bite-sized pieces. It makes the person reflecting have an easier time being kind of clear about reflecting back to you. So I'm going to be the first listener as a way of kind of modeling what this looks like. And my dog is playing with a squeaky toy, if you can hear strange squeaks. And I'm wondering who would like to jump in and be our first speaker.
I can be the first speaker.
All right, Rosie, I am listening.
Okay. So I'm going to speak to what's on my heart right now, which is that after the cafes, well, kind of like with equity and inclusion and just being more aware of the world, as I've been practicing and participating in these empathy circles, it's kind of one of those when once you start to be able to see it, you can't unsee it, and you see it everywhere.
So you started really wanting to share what was on your heart right now. And after participating in some of the empathy cafes, you're thinking also about your lens and perspective on equity, and the fact that once you see things, you can't unsee them.
That's right. So I've had a couple of conversations with people who I considered my closest friends. And we've been having some conflicts and rifts over the last year or so. And I couldn't put my finger on what the problem was, but I feel like I see now that at least a part of it is a lack of empathy from my friends.
So you're thinking about your relationships with some very close friends, and starting to have a sense of something that's there, but you weren't quite putting your finger on it yet. But there was some sort of riff happening. And as you've come through this process, you're seeing that it's an absence of empathy in the exchange.
Yes, that's right. And so, I mean, WhatsApp is never a good way to communicate, but that seems to be the only way during COVID. So during a WhatsApp exchange, I thought I should be practicing active listening and empathy. And I thought I was, but then I realized I wasn't really listening. I was still making assumptions, and I had to backtrack and apologize.
So during COVID, we end up having conversations on mediums like WhatsApp, which is not necessarily ideal, but and you really value empathy and strong listening skills, but you realized that in some of that you were not always practicing empathy, and you had to backtrack and acknowledge that.
Yes, that's right. And what I've been calling from my friends a lack of understanding, or they're misinterpreting or misunderstanding what I'm saying. And it's also that has led me to a lot of self-doubt and questioning of myself, that maybe it's me, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I'm just a kind of person that people don't like or can't get along with. But now I do believe that a part of it is they're not actively listening to me and practicing empathy.
So through this process of your growing awareness in this dynamic with your friends, you experience some self-doubt and some self-questioning about how much it was about you. But further along in this process, you've realized that it really is kind of centered around this absence of empathy.
Yes, that's right. And it's really making me appreciate, it's teaching me what I need to, how I can be more empathetic of others through active listening, how I can teach or guide others to be more empathetic through active listening, and how much I want my friends to actively listen to me and really hear me, not just interpret whatever they think I'm saying.
So through this process of all this like awareness building that and coming to terms around these empathy dynamics, you've also been able to reflect on your own empathy and really being with people, and you are really growing and stretching yourself in those ways. So, and we're at time.
Thank you. I feel heard.
Yeah, thank you, Rosie. So I will, whoever's been the listener then turns into the speaker. So I'll go ahead and speak to somebody. One thing I just wanted to clarify, like as I was talking to Rosie, if there's ever a moment where your listener is reflecting and they're not quite getting the essence of what you're saying, always feel free to clarify and say like, actually, I just want to, however you want to clarify, but that's always kind of a wonderful way of reaching for more understanding if there is any of that missing. All right. Let's see. Dr. Melinda, would you be up to being my listener?
Sure.
All right, starting my timer. Yeah, I'm excited also to hear, I'm sort of thinking about what Rosie was saying, and I'm excited also to hear about how we not only use this practice in our professional lives, but how it also is such a self-growth practice as we reflect on what's happening with our friends and also what's happening inside of us.
What I hear you saying is that you're excited to hear what Rosie is saying, but also very excited to understand how we use empathy with our friends and our family, and how it kind of entwines with the empathy circle, and how sometimes we have to look at that and see and kind of reflect on ourselves to see where that empathy is. Are we using the empathy as with our family and friends as well?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, I think I'm also aware in my own growth process that there's sort of healing modalities that tell us things that we should be doing. And there's times where that hasn't been a good fit for me or my clients or my students, but that the empathy model is this wonderful modality that just kind of underpins everything. And I think I also really like the way that empathy for others also helps us reflect on our empathy for ourselves.
I hear you say that you like the way that empathy works with the healing process, and that how helping others to heal, we're kind of growing with that. Your growth process has like grown with understanding how empathy works with the healing process, especially with our family and friends.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think sometimes with some modalities, it's something that we impose on others, but this empathy model is really something that no matter what you do, you cannot not have it impact your own process.
Right. And I hear you say, that with the modality, it's not about pushing this empathy circle on anyone. It's just having them to open up, which is a greater process than having to push something onto someone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm excited to see everybody here and what they bring to the process. And yeah, my time's about it. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you get to choose your listener, and I will continue to do the timing.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Gary. Gary, would you mind being the listener?
Sure, I'm listening.
Okay. Great. Great. So, I have a lot, so I'm just gonna start right here, because I took the Empathy Cafe a couple of times a month ago, and I had just been waiting for the class to start. And in the process of that, one of my organizations had a meeting on yesterday, and it kind of left me feeling some type of way.
I heard you saying that you took the cafe a couple of months ago and you just kind of been waiting for the class, and you had a meeting with one of the organizations that just left you in a kind of situation.
Definitely. And I think it's only, like Rosie said, we start our growth with Empathy Circle, and we start to see things that we had probably not seen before. And I am realizing that between all the bickering that they were doing, it's kind of a lack of empathy in there. So it makes me want to remove myself.
So I hear you saying that you went through an episode of not hearing empathy or people being empathetic and a lot of bickering, which gave you a bias ideal to remove yourself from that organization meeting.
Definitely. I think that everything is because of the lack of empathy that they have for each other. They're not being heard, so everything is being repeated. No one's doing the listening, so nothing is being fixed. And my heart says that, when is it going to stop? When are we going to realize? Because we're all social workers. So when are we going to realize that we need to grow and be empathetic toward everyone on this Zoom meeting?
So what I hear you saying and feeling is that you felt a deep sense of empathy for those that was not listening to one another, and that it bothered you to the point that you wanted to force yourself to say, when are we going to listen to each other? Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I had some conversations with my husband because I don't want to feel like a failure, and I don't want to say that I'm stepping down because of this, but it's just so much lack of empathy. I feel where I'm growing and where I'm going, that maybe this is not the organization for me at this particular time because of my growth.
Because of your disconnection and your growth, you feel like you talked to your husband the other day about stepping down from this organization at this time to maybe they can grow a little bit more so that there is some empathy and they are listening to one another?
Not so much as I want them, but I think that because they can't see past it, it's just something that I'm not willing to deal with. I can mention, hey, let's have an empathy circle and get no response. So I'm thinking that they're not ready for the growth and they're not ready to see. So for me not to put myself and lose my empathy, because I have kids to understand, I have kids and students to focus on, that I don't want to bring it back to somewhere else and start unfeeling that lack of empathy because it's being pressed on me from somewhere else, you know?
Okay, so what I hear you saying is that you're not necessarily saying that you want to pull away from it because of they're not ready. They're just not ready, period. And you don't want to backpedal or lose what you have already gained by being caught up into the whirlwind of this non-empathetic situation.
Absolutely, absolutely, definitely. Because like I said, I have students that rely on me to be empathetic every day, and backtracking and not being able to will allow me not to give my students what they need, and they won't see that I'm listening to them because I'm so caught up with something else.
So you're saying that you have students that you have to be there for every day to be empathetic with, and that if you start backtracking, it might show that you might not be there for them in an empathetic way or listening to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So do you
All
feel
right.
heard? Do you feel heard?
I do feel heard. I do feel heard.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. So Gary, you get to pick a listener. And, one thing I don't know whether we talked about is that when we're in this process of either being an active listener or speaker or a silent listener, we don't write things in the chat or do emojis or anything, just as a part of really staying focused on the exchange and the being a silent listener. All right, Gary, go ahead.
Edward, would you like to be my listener?
Yep, listening.
Okay. From listening to what the doctor was talking about, it made me touch base with one of the values I talked about, loyalty, and how loyal that we have to be in developing this culture, meaning that sometimes there's going to be difficult moments, but those difficult moments should be the moments that we should learn a way to teach what we're trying to teach, rather than walk away from it, unfold it. At least give it 2 or 3 tries before you walk away from it, and that's what I was thinking.
Okay, so it came up to you as what you were hearing is the importance of loyalty, that if you're in a situation that you sort of stick with it to try to address it, give it several times, give it some times before leaving, and you're calling that loyalty, that stick-to-itness.
Yeah, yes, that's one of the values I thought that I think is real important to create a culture of empathy. Is you have to be loyal to creating that culture of empathy, not willing to give up when the fight gets hard.
So to create a culture of empathy, you have to be loyal to the value of empathy, to stick with it. If it gets hard, you still stick with it.
Yes, not to the point that it's going to take away from you, but it should. If you have the loyalty and the hope and the faith to go along with it, it will teach you how to take the challenge and move forward and grow even stronger in the empathetic culture.
Mm-hmm. So if you have that loyalty to the value of a culture of empathy, that you'll face those challenges and you'll grow through those challenges and make you stronger.
Yes, that's the reason I use the word loyalty, because that's what I have to do in order to succeed in helping build a culture of empathy here in my area and in my job and inside myself, because I'm a very emotional person that doesn't show his emotions, and so I have to learn to be more empathetic so my emotions will be true.
Mm-hmm. So you're a very emotional person, but you keep those feelings, sounds like, sort of hidden, and you want to be able to be true to those feelings, and it sounds like maybe express them.
Yes, more openly and in a respectful way, where it's not being overbearing or forced down nobody's throat, but they can sense my real emotions rather than me suffering over them, because I'm a real sensitive person, and sometimes when people are around me, they can't see the sensitivity and they think I'm a hard nose, and I'm really not, because I do care about the humane things that we do to each other, and that bothers me deeply to see people just walk over people the way the society is going today, not being empathetic, and the take control. I'm gonna take rather than be empathetic and say, well, be considerate and say, well, do you mind if I do this? And it troubles me.
Yeah, so you you're a very sensitive person, but people may not see that sensitivity. Maybe they see more of a hardness, but you have a real care and sensitivity to when you see people just taking and not really being empathic with each other. So you want to have a commitment. You want to be able to express yourself, your honest feelings, but not overwhelm other people with those as well.
Yes, and I don't want nobody to feel that they have to be what's the word I want to use? I'm not making up excuses for what I do or what I say, but I'm being who I am and being genuine. And that's what I want them to understand, that that's what empathy gives me, genuine.
Yeah, so the empathy gives you a sense of trying to generally express your feelings, and I say that was the time. Do you
Yes.
feel heard?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll speak to Rosie then next.
Hey, Edwin, I'm listening.
Okay, yeah, I was hearing concern about being in work environments where it's not mutual, so there's empathy, which is sort of this core foundational value, but I think the next value after that for me that's important is that it be mutual. And it's hard, sometimes it's just hard to bring people into that mutuality. I think that's sometimes a real challenge.
So I hear you being concerned about what you're hearing from others around lack of mutuality in empathy and listening in the workplace. And you see that the next one value is empathy, but another value is that mutuality. And that could be a real challenge.
Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate what Gary was saying about, I use the word commitment or perseverance. For a culture of empathy, I feel I got to be committed to it. I have to persevere. And I'm willing to listen first, but then I want to invite people into a mutual empathic dialogue. It's not going to be all me listening. It's like, hey, how about we have a mutual listening here? And if people are not interested in that, I can say, well, this is not the relationship I want. I want a mutual, I'm willing to listen to you, but I want to be heard too. And how about we use an empathy circle to get started? So yeah, that persistence for that, culture and that mutuality, I think is central for me.
So I hear you really resonating with what Gary said, where he used the word loyalty, but for you, it's maybe persistence or commitment, or I hear it almost like a fighting for it. And you're willing to take the initiative to listen, but you really want some kind of reciprocity back from others and to be in a mutual relationship or group together where you're listening to each other.
And what I was hearing you and others too, talking about the situation is sort of the pain that happens being in an environment where people aren't listening to each other. It's so painful. It's so stressful and painful. It's like, I don't want to deal with this. I want out of here, kind of to withdraw. And so the challenge of how to maybe listen first, but how do we bring people into that agreement? We need that agreement that we're going to listen to each other. So,
So I hear you also empathizing with the pain that's been expressed in our circle when people aren't empathizing and listening. And it's one thing for us to listen first, but without that mutuality and, inviting people in. But if they're not coming in, then the pain makes us want to withdraw.
Oh, another thing that came up to me, a tip is we need to be supporting each other. Like here, we're listening to each other, we're empathizing with each other. This is sort of like an empathy battery charging station, right? It's like you come here, you get heard, you get to share your pain, and it kind of it helps give it fills your empathy tank. So when you go back out to the desert, empathy desert, you've got sort of more reserves. And so this, the empathy circle, having a community is really important to fill that empathy tank.
So I hear you giving a tip for us to keep in mind, which is that being in this community and empathy circle together is like recharging our empathy batteries. And we hopefully get filled with empathy so that we can also go out where there's less empathy and give that to others.
We need empathy to give empathy, right? So if you want to give fuel and energy, you got to get fuel and energy too. So it's central. Yeah, it's core.
So I hear you saying that we can't give empathy if our own empathy tanks are empty. And so it's important to keep those as full as possible.
I feel very heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. So I think it's my turn to speak, and I would like to invite Melinda to be my listener, if you would.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. So Melinda, I appreciate everyone in this circle. I particularly wanted to ask you to be my listener next because I was really resonating with what you shared.
I understand that you really kind of got on the same page of what I was saying, but you love listening to everyone in the circle.
Absolutely. And what I felt I related to and what you shared, Melinda, is what I'm also feeling, that when I have right now, this lack of empathy I'm feeling from my friends is making me want to withdraw.
Mm-hmm. I understand that we related in a way of what you feel with your friends is also what I felt with my organizational sisters, and that, like me, you want to withdraw from them.
Yes, that's right. And I'm really struggling with that desire to withdraw right now because I'm afraid that that's actually a lack of empathy on my part, which I don't want to do because it feels like an empathetic person wouldn't just quit her group of friends, which I'm not planning to do 100%, but I can't reconcile the pain of being with them and my own desire to maintain a relationship.
I hear you saying that you're struggling right now with the decision to remove yourself from them because you don't want to feel like you're leaving them and you don't want to feel like you're an empathetic person. And so even though your desire is overpowering to withdraw from them, you somehow are going to be struggling with it because they're your friends. And so you don't want to, even though you know they're being empathetic, you want to make them empathetic versus just withdrawing from them. And so I can actually understand how that is a struggle for you and whatnot. So
yes, thank you. That making them empathetic is that's a good way to put it. And that's also what I'm struggling with because I believe that loving others unconditionally means not trying to change who they are. But something I've also been wondering is it possible for a person to have no empathy? Like psychologically, I think that might be called a sociopath or a psychopath, which we think of as killers. But truly, a friend of mine herself says that she has she can't name her feelings. So yeah, I just wonder if there's people out there who are incapable of empathy.
I hear you have a question. You have a question of, is there people who are empathetic and are they necessarily serial killers and psychopaths? Because, you deal with one every day that says that she is totally empathetic. And you're wondering, how could that even be? I know that we listen to Mr. Edwin and we hear him saying you can't be empathetic if you don't get empathetic. So you're trying to kind of put her in perspective, which leaves you with all the despair because you don't know. To answer that question, really, there are some people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're psychopaths. It just could mean that their heart is kind of cold because of something that they went through in their lifetime or in their history. It's not a reflection of you and who you are, and trying to change them into being an empathetic person. It's just something that they're going to have to deal with on their own. And changing them is not I don't believe it's something that you're trying to do. You're just trying to, like he said, you have to be empathetic to have empathy, so.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a challenge with my friends, but I wonder how to do this in a workplace setting if people are asked or told to be in an empathy circle and they don't really want to be there, but we need to deal with some conflict. How will they react if they? Yeah, I wonder how to deal with this challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's
Can you reflect
understandable.
That last
And
part? Can you just reflect back that last part? So
yeah, and I understand that you're trying to see how you do it also in a workplace when there's conflict there and they don't want to take part in the empathy circle. I'm pretty sure much as the weeks go by,
So you don't want to give any kind of commentary on it, just
Okay.
reflect back. When it's your turn, you
Okay.
can say anything you want, which is, it's now your turn, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah,
Thank you, Melinda.
I hear you saying that you're welcome, that you're trying to see how to cross it over to the workplace and work with it that way.
Thank you, Melinda.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it can be, this has been an issue for me too, where I feel like I want to answer where the person is coming from, like give them more to that, you know, that issue of non-empathy, but we really try to stay with just reflecting what they're saying and where they're at, even though, like, especially as a social worker too, like we want to move into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's so I'm going, I think, Joel, you haven't been listening, so I'm gonna choose you.
Great, I'm listening.
You know what? I think you're absolutely right. That's going to be my main goal focus for this empathy circle for the next 5 weeks is how do I put that social worker skill in the box and just reflect? Because reflection is good, it's what we do, but how do I not want to answer all the other stuff that is in there? And so that's going to be hard for me.
So you're realizing that your skills and gifts as a social worker are also something that you want to be aware of in this format, and that's something you're going to just have on your mind about leaving that fixing, helping social worker a little bit to the side while you're reflective, doing your reflective listening.
Definitely. And I think that, and actually, as I was saying it, I can't wait to kind of do an empathy circle because the first one, one of my values was trust, whenever the screen went, because I have some trust issues with my colleagues. And I think that this empathy circle would kind of help us because I feel I can't be as professional with her as I want to be because of the lack of trust that has been broken. And it's so many of us that feel that way that I don't think the challenges that we're gonna face in the next couple of weeks, because we're not feeling heard at the work spot, I think it's gonna harm us more than help us.
So you're really thinking about working on this empathy circle format for your work, and how a really important value for you is trust. And that with some people in your work environment, you don't feel like you can fully be your professional self with all you have to offer because this lack of trust is impacting your work and the way that you're relating with people, and that this lack of empathy is a pretty big deal to the work interactions.
Definitely. Trust is a big, especially when your leadership is here. And so trust is huge for me. I have to build trust with my clients and my students. So it sits at the highest level. So if I can't trust my coworker to be for social worker interest or for my best interest on the job, then how am I supposed to work with her? You know, how does that cross and I'm supposed to work with her? You know, because I think she's lacking that empathy for her fellow colleagues.
Yeah. So trust is just so important to you and so important to the work that you do with your students and the people that you work with. Like they need to have trust in you, and you're thinking also about your trust for your coworkers. And with this lack of empathy is a really big deal. Kind of feels like it's in the center of what's going on for you with your work.
Definitely. Like I say, the growth that came from the empathy cafe and the circles and just getting ready. And then now this first session is kind of really bringing it back to back home for me, you know, like it all revolves around empathy for someone. And so how do I, and again, you know, not only was trust, but honestly speaking, how do I feel comfortable enough to feel safe in an environment that we're talking and think she's going to hear me? when there's no trust there for her.
Yeah, so you're thinking about just some of the growth and awareness that's happened for you with the empathy cafes, and how this is, you just have this awareness of what's happening in these exchanges with this coworker, and like, how are things going to move forward or change if this person is not having those basic skills of empathy, and trust and honesty are really important to you. Yeah.
I definitely feel heard.
All right.
Definitely.
Thank you. Everybody, can we take a quick 3-minute break to grab water or use the restroom and come back in 3 minutes? Sound okay? All right. All right. We've got about 34 minutes left on our timer. So a few more turns. I'll wait another minute for Melinda, and then we can get started, just in case. I know sometimes when people are at work, they get.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Oh, good. I was just thinking of you in a school environment getting like caught by someone in the hall.
I blocked my time off, so
good for you. All right. So I'm the next speaker. Rosie, are you up for listening?
I'm ready to listen, Joelle.
All righty. Thank you. Yeah. One thing I love about this kind of empathy process that we do is that people have referred to it as kind of riffing, where like what other people are talking about, we all kind of build and feed off of it. Kind of all these ideas start to percolate up.
So I hear you saying that one thing you appreciate about empathy circles is how creative the process can be, and that as people share their thoughts, ideas build on each other.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've all spoken to this idea that participating in the empathy circle or the empathy cafe it feels like it's given each of us a clearer felt experience of what active listening and empathy feels like. And that once we've felt that, or like, as you said, Rosie, once you see it, you can't unsee it. We go back out into the world and see things with new eyes or a new felt experience.
So I hear you say that you're hearing us share how being part of these empathy circles has given us more clarity and a lived experience that we bring with us back into the world, in the way that, once we start seeing things, we can't unsee them, and it really crystallizes some things for us.
Yeah. And and that I've had some similar challenges with friends and coworkers where I'm seeing this absence of empathy and listening in some environments, and then needing to make some decisions about how do I want to deal with this. And one of the big pieces that is a little bit newer for me is the inclusion of self-empathy. Like, we want to be empathetic to our friends and coworkers, but we also want to be very clear about empathy for ourselves and what are our needs and wants. How do we best, what kind of environments do we want to be in to thrive and be well?
So I hear you, excuse me, talking about how you're seeing the challenge of people with a lack of empathy or a perceived lack of empathy. And you're also realizing the importance of self-empathy, and how, how you're wondering, I guess, how do we bring that in so that we have inclusive environments?
Yes, I feel like this process, and other sort of healing stuff I've been involved with, has really shifted the way I see myself with coworkers and with friends, and I have some things are shifting and changing for me, and that's not always very comfortable. It can be a little unsettling.
So I hear you sharing about how things are shifting for you and the way you are with your coworkers and others. Because things are shifting for you, it doesn't always feel comfortable anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly my time. So thank you, Rosie. I feel fully heard, and you can go ahead and.
Thank you, Joel. Gary, would you like to be my listener?
I'm listening.
Thank you, Gary. Oh, I absolutely feel like my empathy batteries are being recharged right now to be in this group with all of you.
You're saying that your empathy battery is being recharged to be in this group with us.
Absolutely. And I can't tell you how I feel loved when I'm speaking and I can tell that you're really listening to me and you're really listening to what I'm trying to say, not just putting your own opinion or interpretation over me.
I hear you saying that you feel loved and you feel really heard because I'm not trying to put my own interpretation or feelings into this.
Exactly. And one of the things I appreciate about the empathy circle, I guess, exercise or our approach is that it really forces me and everyone else to slow down, especially in how we're always like in a meeting, it's always get through the agenda, how fast and efficiently can we do this? And our minds are already racing. I feel how much energy it takes for me to really hear what you and others are saying. It's such a need to concentrate.
I hear you saying that you're finding that out, that it takes a great need to focus, to hear what other people are saying, and also feel and see the other things that you can see in this empathy circle as it takes place, which means that you have to slow down your thinking process in order to focus it. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes, exactly, Gary. So I could see also where it's not maybe just a lack of time that might be an obstacle for people to participate or actively listen to others, but perhaps also a lack of energy, like maybe they're tired in the day. And our world is such a distraction world now that it really is hard to focus for more than a few seconds at a time and get your mind back. Oh, what was Gary just saying? And to hear you.
So I hear you saying that it's not just the issue of time, but it's also the distractions that the society gives to us that takes away from our focus to actually hear what people say. It's such a hurry society that we just don't automatically think that we have the time or the energy, mostly the energy, because you might be tired in order to hear what someone else is saying.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. And I really liked what you said, Gary, earlier about loyalty and how you're tying your values and one of them being loyalty into listening. And now you're making me think of, like, I see a value is also, for me, would be then love, because if you are putting aside the time and you're focusing all your mind and your energy just on me, that means I'm more important to you in this moment than anything else.
You throwing in the value of love because you see that if a person is putting all their time and energy into listening to you, that shows a lot of love and compassion.
Yes, exactly. And now I'm also wondering or thinking for myself that maybe that's what bothers me about my friends as well, is that when they only have their own interpretation of what they think I'm saying, or they don't invest the time to meet with me or have the conversations. I thought I was kind of imagining that I don't feel cared for, but I really don't feel cared for because it shows me where their priorities are.
You thought that it might have been just your imagination, that they didn't care, but you're starting to see that they just don't care because they haven't took the time or the energy to put into understanding what you're talking about or saying.
Yes, I feel well heard. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Joel?
Yes.
You feel like listening?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. This has been a very eye-opening circle for me because I'm learning to be selfish in a way that selfishness should be applied, where I think about my needs being met. But at the same time, I'm meeting my needs being met. I'm reaching out because there's a need that I need from that person. So how would I go about doing it? By thinking about what would I do if I was in that person's shoes? How would I get that response?
So you feel like you're getting a lot out of this circle, and thinking about the concept or value of selfishness, and thinking about your own needs and wants, and then thinking about when you're with another person. Clarify if I get this wrong, Gary, but that you're thinking about them also, but about also how to express your needs and wants. So it sounds like you're thinking of empathy and for both of you.
You're very close. What I'm saying is that what I'm trying to say is that in order for me to get my needs met, I have to think about how would I want them to, if they were wanting the same need, well, how would they come to me to get that need out of me so I can approach them that way? That's the selfishness that I'm talking about.
Right. So you're talking about finding ways to ask to have your needs met, but you're also thinking about if they were coming to you asking for the same thing, what would that look like?
Yeah. And that's how I go about communicating my needs to another human being, because that's selfishness in a proper way. It's not being self-centered. It's just, it's really putting you first. I'm putting myself first, but at the same time, I'm bowing down humbly to ask that person the way I would want to be asked.
Right. So you're talking about kind of a healthy concept of selfishness.
Yeah.
That works in a good way, and sort of asking and reaching out to have your needs met, but you're also employing empathy because you're thinking about kind of how that person is receiving your message, and empathy and kindness towards them at the same time.
Yes, and this is what I'm picking a lot of vibration on this circle today. It's filling my tank up to be very empathetic and very clear about what my needs are. Like I heard the word trust. I understand trust starts at home. How can I say somebody my trust is damaged when I have to learn to trust myself first? If I'm not trusting myself, I'm going to have a lack of trust for that next person. And I understand that now because I'm listening. I'm really listening to how this concept works. It's like you want love, you got to give love. You want trust, you got to give trust. You know, and I understand that concept now, the way that the world works, and that it's very eye-opening and it's very uplifting.
So you're really feeling like your empathy tank is being filled, and you're thinking and growing a lot through this process. And the subject of trust was a big deal for you. Like you need to have trust. You want to have trust in yourself, and that needs to be there for you to also have trust in others.
Yes, I truly feel heard. Thank you.
Was that enough time for you?
Yes, it was.
All right. Let's see. How'd I get to be a speaker again? Hold on, all my timers going off. Edwin, will you be my listener?
Yep, listening.
Yeah, I just love the way this process, all of our brains kind of get refueled and filled up with new thoughts and new ideas that it just feels like it generates new energy inside of me.
You really like the process because it's creating new energy for you, new thoughts, new feelings, just lots comes up. And
and like you were saying, you know, I had questions for myself when I thought about, you know, coming back to this empathy circle training and the empathy cafe, because I realized that I wasn't just coming back for the fact of how it would serve others. I sort of had this sense that I was also coming back for myself, and I had a little bit of like almost uneasiness or questions about that. And what you said about refilling our empathy tank to kind of refuel us to go back out in the world kind of made all that click together for me.
So you noticed that when you came back, it wasn't just to come back so you could contribute to others, but it was something about yourself. And then when I talked about the mutuality, then it kind of clicked and it sort of made sense. Sounds like maybe you're feeling a little guilty that it was just for yourself too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's now it's like, oh, maybe it's okay.
Right. Exactly. And that's sort of because of my history, the role of self-empathy in myself and self-empathy practice is sometimes a little bit new and like a not a well worn sort of neural pathway for me. So it's lovely to be in an environment where the practice of self-empathy also builds on being of service to others. Like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, so self-empathy is sort of a new idea, more of a new idea, and you're still sort of exploring the nature of it. And in the circle, you're seeing that the self-empathy actually contributes to others as well in this environment, and probably feels good.
Yeah, exactly, it does. Let's see. Yeah, I think that I mean, I was raised in I think because I was raised in an environment where people did not practice empathy for others. Well, they practiced an interesting, like they didn't exhibit empathy towards us, like say my brother and I, there was a lack of there's like things that happen in the brain that cause people to have almost an atrophied capacity for empathy. So I think that was an early experience of almost expecting lack of empathy, but having to show it to, but I was expected to show it to others.
So you're going back to your childhood where you feel that you didn't receive the empathy, is sort of atrophied it in something with your parents or in the family, but there was this expectation that you show it, not necessarily that you would receive it, but you had to show it to others.
Right. So it's like these early neural pathways that get formed in us where, if you don't receive empathy, it somehow doesn't get wired into you in the same way. And there's some really fascinating stuff in relational neurobiology about how that happens, and that people can have so much loss that they don't have a lot of capacity for empathy.
So some of these patterns get so wired into our brains. So if we didn't sort of receive empathy, then that's not really sort of wired into your brain. You're kind of tying it in with the neuroscience, kind of how it works with neuroscience.
Yeah. Thank you, Edwin. I feel fully heard. That was my time.
Great. Melinda, can I speak to you then?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, I was really the topic of trust, honesty, and safety, that was mentioned. I thought I'd talk a little bit about that. So I'll pause there.
I hear you said that the topic of trust,
honesty and safety, which were your topics.
So I hear you say you're going to touch and talk on a little bit of that.
Yeah. So I like to think about the empathy as sort of like a spiral, like a constructive spiral. So at the core is empathy, but then you can kind of have, mutuality, and it kind of creates a little empathy engine, right? So, and for me, trust is knowing that the other person will listen to me and hear me. And I think for me, that's what trust and safety, where that comes from is. So having that empathy at the core.
I hear you say that empathy is at the core for you, and it kind of, you have all these things that kind of work as the engine and inspire up. And trust is one of those that says, I trust the other person to listen to me, so that I can be heard.
Exactly.
And it has a whole lot of other values that help out with that engine.
And then if I have trust, I start feeling safe. And if I feel safe, I feel I can be more honest and open, right? I know that, I won't be attacked or be criticized. And then with that, you can collaborate, come up with working with each other's needs, come up with shared agreements. So there seems to be an open, upward spiral versus maybe a downward spiral of no empathy, fear, anxiety, stress, pain, and it goes sort of in the other directions. I guess I see two different, value spirals that all kind of like feed into each other.
I hear you saying that from the empathy, you see two different spirals. One, if you have empathy, and then you build the trust, and then with trust, where we feel safer to express our feelings around everyone. And then versus the unempathy, where we start to feel a little fear, lack of trust. And so we can actually kind of look at it in two ways and kind of build from that right there.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the other part is, Joella was talking about self-empathy. The empathy circles support self-empathy, because like now I'm self-empathizing, I'm sensing into my thoughts and feelings, and you're listening to me. So your listening is contributing to my self-empathy, right? It's like I get this little empathy bath from you, and which allows me to, so I guess I want to make the point that self-empathy is not like, meditation or something where you go off into the woods necessarily to get your self-empathy. You get self-empathy in the circle here by others listening to you in relationship.
Yeah, I hear you say that, we kind of ask ourselves, how do we get self-empathy? And self-empathy actually comes from us receiving that the other person is listening to us, reflecting back on Joelle's, statements that empathy, that's how we self-heal ourselves. And so it brings it all together. So we can kind of look at it, self-empathy from that point. What I'm receiving is healing.
Exactly. Yeah. Healing. That's it. It's also a healing, but it takes time. We have to slow down. Like I think Joella was saying, we have to slow down. We have to take the time. But I think from my experience, in the long run, it's actually 100 times more efficient, right? You take more time in the beginning. If I think of your work environment where you're like struggling with everything and all the pain, it's so inefficient, all that dysfunction. And it just goes on and on, and the culture, it goes on and on. So if we just take a lot of time to begin with building the empathy, it's just going to solve a lot of problems, down the road, and save a lot of time in the long run.
I hear you say to save a lot of time in the long run. We need to kind of look at time in the beginning to build that empathy, so that it almost kind of works that where we're not pushing and pulling and it causes conflict. We've already built it from the beginning, and then it'll just take off and go from there.
I feel deeply heard. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to check in with everybody. We could do one more turn and then take about 10 minutes to debrief, or I wanted to check in about how that feels for everybody, or 2 more turns and just 5 minutes for a debrief and questions. Does anybody have strong feelings either way? All right, maybe one more exchange and then debrief. All right, go for it.
Okay. So I'm going to use, I don't think I've had Rosie listen.
Sure, happy to.
Okay, great. So Rosie, just even going back on what Edwin was talking about just a few minutes ago, kind of opened something for me. I never thought of it as being two, the non-empathy as having fears and stuff, and then the empathy as having trust. And as we know, trust is here. So in a sense, I'm right here at this, I have empathy, but I don't feel that this person has empathy. So I feel a little unsafe and untrustworthy of her to listen to me. So I don't want to say anything. So that's my struggle right now, because I just realized that.
So I hear you saying that part of your struggle with trusting others is if you're sensing different levels of empathy between the two of you. And if you think you have a higher level of empathy than them, then you're not going to be as trusting of them.
Correct. I don't think that she doesn't have it. What I think is that she's not using it. So I'm not going to be hurt. So why should I voice anything if I feel that she's going to take it away, do something else with it, or not even be? That's huge when you don't feel like you're your thoughts or what you're saying is being heard by someone, regardless or not if they act on it, at least validate it. And so I just stay quiet. And I don't know if that's the right thing to do in times.
So I think I hear you saying that you feel safer to be quiet than to take a risk and share something with someone who won't be empathetic to what you're saying or is not using their full empathy. And then they might take it and who knows what they're going to do with it, but they're not treating it with care.
Correct. And it brings back to what Gary was saying about selfishness. And I think that is my selfishness part. Like I have all this empathy and I don't want to share it with you because I don't think that I'm going to be heard. And so I guess I kind of link them all together, which throws me into that I'm judging them. That's what I just realized. Like I'm literally judging them. And their lack of empathy. And so I don't know how to come from, like, I want to come from it and I want them to have this empathy, but the actions that they're showing me tells me that they're not. So I just rather be selfish with what I have as this empathy and that I'm trying to give it to someone and teach them how to communicate with it, because I think they're just going to throw it off to the side and not do anything with it.
So I hear you saying that it feels selfish when you don't when either you don't trust the person or you don't feel that they are empathetic enough towards you. And even though the unselfish part of you wants to give them empathy, you don't want to do that because you don't trust that they're going to hear you properly. And then you're kind of in conflict with yourself about this now, because how do you give yourself empathy?
Correct. You are absolutely correct. And so that's my biggest struggle. And I'm hoping that these next 5 weeks can kind of smooth that out, because I do want to be able to have an empathy circle with them. But then my trust is broken with her so much that I don't think that she's going to listen. And I think that it's going to just go, to the wayside. And again, am I being selfish with that and just not wanting to say anything? And just give it to the people who will appreciate it and value it,
So I hear you really having a lot of hope for these next 5 weeks, that it'll help you in your struggle with this balance between what feels like selfishness and what your needs are, but also needing to deal with this coworker and, whether or not she's really going to hear you and just how to almost compromise between those.
Correct. I definitely feel fully heard.
Wonderful. Thanks, Melinda. I'm going to ask if, Gary, you'll be my listener again, just so you get to speak again.
Okay, yes.
Hey, everybody, I just want to jump in real quick about maybe we'll do this one last, maybe a 3-minute turn, and then just make sure if we have any last moment questions, we save a few minutes towards the end. Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Gary.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I have a lot of the thoughts that have been spoken are echoing in spinning motion in my head right now as well, especially what's been shared around the feeling of selfishness and actually selfishness. I'll add to that guilt or even shame of, well, I shouldn't feel this way if I'm a good person.
You have a lot of the thoughts floating around in your head, and more so the selfishness, and you feel a lot of guilt and shame behind that. You don't feel like you should be feeling that, but you do.
Exactly. And with this one particular friend who has almost self-identified as unempathetic, on the one hand, I just feel so much fear in talking to her because I don't know what I'm going to get back, and hurt from the past, what our interactions have been. But that's conflicting with, well, don't I have an obligation to try to help her? Like if I genuinely think that she's on a wrong track, or there's ways that she could judge, it feels like I'm judging her to say, well, she could be a better person, or this would make, her relationships better. Don't I have an obligation to try to help her with that?
I hear you saying that you had this one real close friend that you feel very judgmental about, and you feel that you might be obligated to help her, but then I sense a fear is what's stopping you from proceeding forward. Is that what I hear you saying?
Pretty much. Like I think that there is a bit of obligation, but it's like a moral obligation or well, if I am truly a good friend or a good person, I wouldn't just leave her behind because I feel hurt by her. I thought that, isn't some of my empathy circle training supposed to help me be empathetic to her and then help her, on her own journey?
Oh, so you're saying that you feel a moral obligation to help her, but at the same time, you think in your empathy circle training should also be aiding you in helping her.
Not that she would be aiding me in helping her, but that I should be helping her because I'm getting this training and I'm her friend, but I don't want to have anything to do with her anymore because of how she's not empathetic to me.
So what I hear you saying, you shouldn't straddle the fence. You want to help her, but at the same time, you don't want anything to deal with her no more.
Yes, exactly. And I definitely feel guilty about that. But then I wonder if that self-care or that self-empathy allows me to, at least at this time, prioritize that, or maybe to be self-empathetic, I do need to distance myself.
So at this time, you thinking that it might be a good thing to distance yourself until you get your self-empathy balanced. That's what I'm hearing, because you feel unbalanced.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I feel well heard. Thank you, Gary.
All right. Edu, am I right thinking that we've got about 5 to 10 minutes left?
A minute and a half.
Oh, okay. Woo! Any quick questions, everybody?
Yeah, I have one. I'm listening to the circle, and I even think I did it myself, where I become judgmental. And how do we go about eliminating that? So we come to the circle unbiased. I think I'm doing it, but I still see myself having some kind of judgment there. And how does that come along with time? It disappears with the more practice that we do in the circle?
I think so. I think that just from my personal experience, if we have sort of a contracting punitive reaction against ourselves for our judgment, it causes kind of a punitive, like contraction. But if you just notice it and know that it will move and change, it does tend to move and change. Does anybody else want to speak to that?
Yeah, you're welcome to be judgmental when it's your turn, where you're free to say whatever you want, and someone will meet your judgment with empathy, and that really helps to transform it. And over time, especially in conflict mediation, just the listening kind of helps overcome and transform that judgment. So yeah, so everybody's gonna be coming back within about 30 seconds.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks to our group.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for participating. And yeah. And Doctor, we can see you at the top of, we see your forehead.
Yeah.
There
Moves
you
the
are.
laptop camera down a little bit so you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my iPad and sometimes, and I gotta sit like, oh.
Yes. Yes, I understand.
Okay, so Larry, you were going to do this part, and we could start with the participants. Hold back on the trainers because we're a really large group, and I think we may not get to everyone, so we want to just hear from the participants first.
Okay, so in this part, I'll say welcome back, and now we would like each of us to take about 1 minute to share your experience and insights from the Empathy Circle, and how did one of your values relate to empathy and the culture of empathy or you could share whatever's alive in you as well. And I'll go through the screen and call on people's names as I see them on the screen. And deep apologies if I miss you. There's more than one screen. And I'm going to start at the top of my screen and call on participants as everyone suggested, and then we'll move along. So Joelle, you're at the top of the screen. Would you share for about 1 minute?
I think I'm a trainee. Are we just talking about
Yeah, I
new-
would start
new
with
people?
the train, hold off on the trainees and trainers to begin with, and we'll just hear from the participants first. So
Melinda, would you share for about 1 minute on how your values relate to empathy?
Yeah, one of my values was trust and honesty. And so when I looked at empathy, the thing was, I feel that in order enough to have empathy, you have to be able to give trust to someone. And so that questions that empathy of another person. And so since it's trust sits so high with me, my main discussion was, how do I trust another person with the care of being empathetic to me, in order enough to say something. And so we developed that there were two, so maybe I sit in that part of, I have empathy, but the people that I'm looking at don't necessarily have empathy. So it causes me to have some non-trust with them and some fears with them. And so we kind of, for me, our circle kind of like geared it back. So if we have empathy, then, and we have trust, then we can actually give empathy to someone and also trust them enough to say that they're going to listen to what we've said. And so, yeah.
Thank you, Melinda. Rosie?
Yeah, I really, really loved the empathy circle we just had. And something that came up repeatedly from everybody in the circle was about how essentially we were, Edwin used the words, filling up our empathy tanks. And I feel like we did that for each other because of how much we were listening and giving each other empathy. And I think there were some realizations about how much we each needed that. And maybe we didn't even realize that we needed that. And a question that was raised that made me really think too was about, how do we give ourselves empathy? And what does self-empathy look like? Not just in the circle, but just in general. So it also made me consider how I show up. If I was facilitating the circle, how would I show up? And what does self-empathy look like so that I can give more empathy to other people? So I don't know how that translates into a value, but it's definitely something very foundational and important that I'm taking away.
Thank you, Rosie. And Regina, would you share for about a minute?
Sure. I too loved our group. I felt like this was the perfect group for today to kick it off. One of my values is mutuality, and I feel like we kind of touched on all those aspects of that in our group around the curiosity and the openness and the care. And it was really, really good in terms of me looking at this from multiple perspectives and situations that could arise, and how do we still maintain the space. And Lou was awesome when he mentioned about it being called, a brave space, because sometimes you may not agree with what someone's sharing. So I really appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. And Maggie in the Northwest, would you share?
Thank you. I was also in the group with Regina and Lou, and my kind of main topic for today and what seems to be a focal point for me is being able to stay grounded and comfortable, actually feeling safe in my own body while going through this process. And also was very resonant with me that we talked about the showing up as a safe space, but also showing up as a brave space. And really loved our group today, and just felt, I felt that there were a lot of these nice interweaving of themes that really started to develop that the kind of groundwork about how we're showing up together. And that's yeah, it spoke a lot to my personal my personal kind of place on it. So thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. And Melissa, would you share?
Yes, thank you, Larry. So in our group initially, we were all new strangers to each other. There was a reserve when we first started speaking, and very quickly it just disappeared because we found so much of what we each believed in that we all shared, and we had so much of common ground that when we started speaking on our subject, we started, connecting with each other and speaking about how we believed in what each of us thought. And that was wonderful. It was a wonderful group. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. And Dominica Ray, would you share?
Yes. So yeah, I just found it interesting how I think almost everybody had like one value in common. And I've mentioned in other empathy cafes or circles I was in, like I always love how really we as people are so innately similar and have more in common than we actually, I think, realize a lot of the time. And so I love having that realization yet again. And also all the values that came up around connection, authenticity, and how that all relates to empathy. I just feel like all of these values are very relatable and connect to each other. So I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominica. And Evelyn, would you share?
I was in Dominica's group. It was very interesting to hear people's thoughts around connections, and I'm sort of mulling over that we had Eero was in our group, and there were constantly technical connection problems, and we were talking about connections, so there was like a metaphor there, and how I think we tried as best we could to keep Eero in the circle, even if the connection was not working, so sort of picking him up again. And yeah, that's what's alive with me at this moment, is sort of mulling over this metaphor. And I hope that next time I can be a trainee. Okay.
Thank you, Evelyn. And Cynthia, I'm not sure if you're a trainer, trainee, or participant.
I'm a trainee, actually.
Awesome. Thank you. So you don't get to share yet. Hold on. All right. Prasanna, would you share?
Prasanna's also.
Oh, you're a trainee as well. So my mistake, my bad again. And Vicente Rulian in Mallorca.
Yeah, I'm a trainee too. Just kidding. Now, it was really interesting. It was really interesting how we were interweaving ideas. I started with the idea of community and how in a community we not just belong, but we need to care for each other. So if someone is suffering, we need to care for that person and support that person. So and very interesting ideas came up from other people, which I won't mention now, but they were good. I was left with the idea that we had like a pot with very many interesting ideas, and I wasn't sure how we were going to eat that. What kind of synthesis, because I felt like taking notes all the time and I don't know, really gathering these ideas, but then they were just flowing and leaving. I don't know. So I'm complete.
Gracias, Vicente.
Gracias.
Thank you. And so Pavla, would you share for about a minute, please?
Hey, thank you, Larry. Yeah, for me, it was so exciting to learn different perspectives. And I still feel we walked from mountains to plain area, different states, and then came to Seoul. And what are values within each one of us, and what are our views towards that? One of the biggest takeaway for me is how every individual encouraged in this listening without non-judgmental way. So thank you, team.
So thank you, Sapadala. Thank you. And Adelina, would you share?
I'm also a trainee.
Oh, wow. Alfred, would you share, please?
Yes, we had a wonderful group that was very vulnerable and supportive and truly empathetic. So I really appreciated that. And I do want to be like Celine and Ralph when I grow up, our facilitators. But I did, my values were love, empathy, and integrity. And only one of them was on the website. I did it before I looked at the website. But I could see how they could be woven into the values that are on the website and undergird this process. One thing that I've mentioned in the works in the group was that integrity, that we need to do this work with integrity. We could misuse this work, knowing what we know, and manipulate, be manipulative or allow it to be so. So that's a key backdrop of integrity.
Thank you, Alfred. And Kendria, would you share, please?
Yes, sorry, I was trying to turn my mute button. First of all, I have to say I was pleasantly surprised about how fast the 2.5 hours went. I had such a great group, and my 3 values were openness, care, and curiosity, and they really play off of each other. And what I learned is all of the values kind of play off each other. And my hope is to gain and put those values into play as we're exploring more empathy. But the one that resonated with me more was care. I think you have to have care to be open to the process. You have to have care to be curious about listening and understanding someone else. I think you have to have care to even display empathy, have patience, have integrity. So I think that was my overarching value that will stick with me, that I will continue throughout this process. So it was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kendria. And Kathleen, would you share?
Yeah, sure. Hi. Yeah, I agree with Kendria about the time going really by really smoothly and quickly. Yeah, in our group, a common theme, which is kind of interesting, we all came from different places and then we converged on community. And my value was involvement, getting involved in what you care about. And we just talked about pretty much how to stay connected, ways to stay connected as you're doing this kind of work or feeling these kind of feelings. So it was really helpful for me today. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. And Gary, would you share?
Yes, the group was fast. I mean, it was just mind-blowing. What I learned and understood today is the core values. I started seeing how these values interweave with one another, and how one of the main ones that has to be done is trust, because we have to have trust in the process. And without that, you can't gain no empathy, you can't gain this, you can't gain that, but you have to trust in the process. And with that, you have to be honest and open. So I'm starting to understand the core values of this empathy circle. I'm not saying that which ones are really the core, but I know trust is one of the main cores values that I had to learn to let come in so I can feel what I feel, the empathy. That's what I learned today.
Thank you, Gary. Sally, would you share, please?
Sure. I didn't realize that there were values and core values, but I like what Gary said, and that maybe you would have a breakdown of such with things like integrity and trust, honesty being the core values. Anyway, I was in a group with Frank, who was the one who was the facilitator. And well, when you listen to people, you pick up so much. I really haven't put a lot of thought into values, but you do when you hear what other people say and you expand upon it in your own what you learn, and it becomes part of this new bigger understanding. So anyway, the most important thing to me was being able to have a breadth of openness, even in impossible circumstances.
Thank you, Sally. And Christine Carino.
Hi. I'm also a trainee.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you. Donnie, would you share, please?
Yes, my top 3 values were and integrity, and I just thought empathy related to all 3, inclusive, and through empathy we can become more equitable, and through empathy we can be more.
Thank you, Donnie. Thank you. And Aro, Faithful, would you share, please?
Yeah, I think it starts with connectivity, connecting with others, and you fairness, kindness, and you move to trust, having safe spaces where people can be free to share their minds and be confident among others, and be able to say their mind and flow together, and share people's feeling across countries, across places, and share love and feel belonged. And for now, that's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Iro, and I would like to thank you all. And if I've missed anyone, please raise your hand or open your mic and say so. And I apologize for calling on people who are already trainees or trainers. You can all get together later and beat me up.
That'll be fun. Well, I'll empathize with you. I just mentioned that we are a very large group. This is the largest cohort we've ever held. So we usually give a chance for everyone to debrief at the end, but it looks like we're not going to have time for everyone. We do have 4 minutes. So if you want to call in a few of the trainees, Larry, and then we'll have 5. We usually have 5 minutes for closing. So we're kind of figuring out how this will work best. So if you want to just call in a few for 4 minutes, we've got.
Thank you, Edwin. Joelle, would you share, please?
Yeah, we had a great group. I feel like I say that every week. Fantastic, kind of riffing and building off of what each person brings to the conversation. And I think what I particularly liked is that this practice of empathy for some of us that are actually a little atrophied around self-empathy, that empathy for others and self-empathy sort of grows in tandem. So there's some beautiful sort of growth and generation in that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Joelle. And Linda, would you share? You're on mute.
I've already shared.
Linda, you already shared? Oh.
Yeah,
No,
no,
Linda.
no, I was muted as usual. I was muted as usual. Did you want me to share, Larry?
Yes, please.
Okay, okay. As usual, like what Joel was saying, it was a great group, and the central thing was community. And Lou he raised some interesting points that I like to probably discuss more when we are in, the debriefing for the trainers. But it was a good group. And it does provide an opportunity not only for practice, but to get to know the participants on an individual level. So,
thank you, Linda. Cynthia, would you share, please?
Absolutely. As everyone else said, we had an incredible group, and so many ideas were shared that I felt my brain was firing a mile a minute. And one of the big things, this is just linking with Joelle, is about providing the space for yourself and self-empathy, and the crucial role of actually having that love, compassion, care, and everything else directed at self before you can even really be with, or even as a deep foundational tool to be able to be empathic with another.
Thank you, Cynthia. And Ralph, would you share, please?
It was absolutely wonderful. It was like a single jewel with many different facets. And I felt as if everybody was a part of my own being. Two people I knew and I got to know better. Two other people I didn't know and I feel I got to know well. I want to thank Kendria for talking about challenges as opportunities. I want to thank Sally for being so forthcoming and for being so empathic that her bunny rabbit came out of hiding. And I want to thank Celine for reminding me as a facilitator that I can use the reference to the values to keep us in the process. And I want to thank Alfred for making me think of humor as a part of empathy. Humor and good humor.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Prasanna, would you share, please?
Yeah, as usual, this is such an amazing process. It's just that the way every empathy circle, right? You just go deeper and deeper into yourself. It's just not that you did it one day, it happens for throughout the life. No, it's like every day you are practicing it. And you find something new. It's like reading a book, right? And then rereading it and you find like, oh, I missed that point. Oh, again, oh, this means something else. That's what the circles all are about. It's going to be different all the time. It's not the same. And that's the beauty of it. And that's because of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasanna.
So at that point, we have 20 minutes for this 25 minutes. We have about a 5 minutes, 4 minute closing. So we'll end it there. And Joelle, you were going to close this out.
All right. So any trainers have something to share with us, reflections?
I've got a short one.
Go for it.
And it's about this Saturday. We have an open empathy cafe. It's an intro to the training. So I'd welcome you all to come to that, and you can actually help facilitate circles there. We have a LinkedIn group where we have for the event, And if you're on LinkedIn, if I'll send the link to it, if you can go there and invite all your friends, you can invite 1,000 friends a week to it. So it's your assignment, if you're on LinkedIn, between now and next week, to invite 1,000 friends. And we actually have like 6,000 people interested in the event. It's like growing like gangbusters. So maybe about 40, 45 show up. So please promote these circles, the Saturday group, and come to the circle and practice, get a little bit of practice. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Other trainers want to jump in? Go for it, Lou.
Yeah, so I just want to say, Vincent talked about how there were so many ideas that came up in the circle, you know, how could you synthesize, or what a challenge to synthesize such a thing. And I just want to say that the empathy circle, the purpose of it is mutual understanding and self-exploration. It's not problem solving. And there have been people who think that, or let me say this, you will get participants in your circle who will think that the process is for problem solving, and they will be trying to find a solution, or they will get frustrated in the circle because they want to take action. They want action to happen. And so that's just something to be aware of as a facilitator, that some people might get frustrated by that, particularly people who are very action oriented. May get frustrated with that, and of course you want to have empathy for them. But yeah, that the empathy circle is a exploration process that could be done as a process before moving into problem solving. But the circle itself is not for problem solving. It's important to stay conscious of that.
Good point.
Thank you, Lou. Other trainer comments? Bill?
Just really quickly, I just want to express my personal appreciation for how deeply each person went into these values. I was very impressed. So thank you. That's it.
Other trainer comments?
Yeah, me, it's deep gratitude for all of you for showing up and sharing what you've shared with us. It's just inspiring. Thank you.
Me too, what Anne said. And one other thing is that I notice in this group, there are several people who are professionally engaged in social services. And, you know, I'm thinking Linda, Alfred, Rosie, Kendria, and I think there are others. So I am imagining you folks in an empathy circle together might be really interesting and supportive. I'm complete.
Yeah. Any other trainer comments? All right, with that, so in review for this session, we reviewed the core values of a culture of empathy. We explored how our values related to empathy and a culture of empathy. And we participated and got to have that felt lived experience of the empathy exchange, which is really amazing and wonderful for all of us. Coming up for next week in session 2, you will each practice facilitating a mini empathy circle. There is a how to facilitate an empathy circle instruction. Edwin usually sends links to all those documents, and those links are probably already in your emails. There'll be an email sent out. You can please fill out the survey to help grow and expand the effectiveness of this training. The link is, I think Edwin's putting some stuff in the chat. If you can keep checking the chat. You get to hold an empathy call, a buddy call, sorry, empathy exchange buddy call. Please check your emails. Keep an eye out for your emails in the next 24 hours, 2 days. It helps a lot to figure out who your buddy is so you can get that scheduled. In our busy lives, that can be a challenge. So you get to have a buddy empathy call. There's a webpage that explains that, and it'll bring up new learning and even new questions. And you can facilitate your own empathy circle. Some people do this with family that are already in their home. Some people do it with coworkers. Some people call up friends and ask for their help. It sounds like it's easier if you say, hey, I'm doing this training, I need some help. Because if you just sort of voluntarily put it out there, people don't always take it up on you. So you could say, please just help me. So that's another thing you can do. And please post one feeling in the chat that you have now as a result of participating today. Inspired, full, fulfilled, peace, touched, grateful and excited, confident, connected, understood, appreciation, fully heard, joy, wonderful, happy. Did I get all of them? Did I miss any? Cared for, connected. All right. Edwin, do we have any last things?
Yeah, last part is turn on your camera. We need a group portrait before we say goodbye. So we always do our jazz hands. Just for final goodbye. Just quick, turn them on, Danny. Yay. So great. So glad you're here. We'll see you next week. Hope to see you Saturday. And let's get those jazz hands up and goodbye for now. And if you're a facilitator or trainee, stay back. We'll do our debrief.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we have a 3-minute pause. Did I turn off the recording? No, we turned it off.